Why don't we get started? Let me see. Yeah, let's get started. 6:02. Willie Matthews. Um, hey, Becky, would you unmute your boss there? Willie.
I agree.
Willie got his wonderful gallery director to work the camera tonight, which is absolutely perfect. Let me see. Yes. Okay. Lee White, you have a question. Yes. All people listening, you are on mute. So you really do need to use that chat below to ask questions. It was just the easiest way to kind of keep this thing on track and keep it streamlined. But I promise I will ask all of your questions. So just let me know what you want to ask the artist. Okay, so Willie Matthews, welcome.
Thanks, Rose. Good to be here. Nice to see everybody, even though I can't see anybody.
I know, that's all right. We can see you, which is the important part. And we get to see you in your fabulous studio. So with the work that we chose for the show, I am so excited about your work. So Willie you were like one of the original artists in the Coors show.
Yes, I am. I'm there at the very beginning, and I'm not sure. I may be the only one left from the very beginning, but I can't remember.
I think you might be. I was trying to think if Barbara Van Cleve was one of the beginning artists as well.
I think it was controversial when Barbara came in, bringing in a photographer.
It was. Yeah. And I actually had artists when I first started come up to me and say, photography has no place in a fine art show. And I just said, I beg to differ. And I actually had a couple artists leave, and I'm like, fine, that's fine.
You were right. You were correct.
Yeah, thank you. I think so too.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. We have amazing photographers, and you know what now, I think the Coors show has been ahead of the curve on a number of things, and including photography in the show, and printmakers as well, has been some of those areas. And now when you see collectible photography really going for tens of thousands in the auction market, I think it's a really important medium that we have. So anyway, but we're here to talk about you. So,
short period.
You know what? You're just one of my favorites because you're just always so much fun to be around. And everybody in Denver knows you. You're like an iconic Denver person. Yeah. And so, and plus the work. Okay. Here's what we really need to talk about right up front. You were in college for art for about 37 seconds.
Not even. I finished high school, so.
You are truly a self-taught artist.
Well, my mother was a big influence. My mother was a painter, serious painter, all of our childhood. My sister Kim, who does wonderful landscapes, and my sister Carrie, who is a designer and draws and paints some, are all really good. My brother is an architect. So, really from the very beginning, we had a strong visual component in our growing up. And so my mother was by far the biggest influence in my life. And to this day, she's still the best painter of all of us. And
really?
97, she's still alive, but unfortunately she's not painting anymore.
Wow. So if there is an art gene, you got it.
I didn't get much, but I got that, hopefully.
I think I really want to dive into these paintings, but I think there's something that is so unique there's just so much unique about every single artist in this Coors show. And I think one of the things for you is that you don't stand still for very long. You travel everywhere. And even you just left school and took off to Ireland, right? And
well, actually, when I left San Francisco, where I'd grown up, I moved down to LA when I was 20 and started doing album covers. I wanted to do album covers, so I ended up working at Capitol Records and at Warner Brothers and a bunch of different labels doing album covers. And that was kind of where I started. Then I moved out to Colorado, and I eventually moved to Europe and spent years in Europe. But that, was a little bit farther down the road.
And okay, and so you weren't just creating paintings and art in Europe. I mean, you were also playing in bands and.
Well, but I was doing hand lettering, and I was doing illustration, and I was, photography has always been a serious pursuit for me, and so it was kind of everything. There was no limit to what I found interesting. It's not to say that I got to be proficient in everything, but I certainly tried my hand at everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? I mean, don't you think that all kind of feeds into the art and the creativity?
I do. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So if people go to your website or they go into your gallery and they see your work, they will see a big variety of stuff. I mean, what you give us for the Coors show is really of the West, but just I kind of want to put that out there too, that Willie is not constrained to cowboys and riders on horseback and things like that. Like, you have paintings from the Middle East and paintings from Europe, and like there's just anything that really piques your curiosity.
Yeah. My grandfather traveled a lot by himself. Abbott Kimball, who was really my mother's father, who was an incredible artist, and he traveled and did drawings, and he would send us packets of them from all over the world. So I grew up thinking that you can travel all over the world and do art, and that can actually be a life. And so really it was Abbott Kimball who gave me the kernel for thinking that I could do that I could actually make that into a career. So
Wow.
I give credit for that.
Wow. Okay. So, questions are kind of pouring in here. So let me ask you a couple. So one, there was a question that I got emailed in yesterday that was, how do you work? Do you work wet on wet, or just a little bit about how you work?
I use sort of every technique that I can think of. Yes, when you start a painting, when I start a painting, I draw it out, I draw out elements of it, and then I put down washes, and they're often very loose and watery, and some of them are intense colors, some of them are more pastel, but I put down washes first and let that dry. And then I come back in and start building up color where I want it, and leaving areas that are white. I want to leave those unpainted and build up darks all around that.
Wow. Okay.
And I use a lot of different kinds of brushes, and I use my fingers, I use my nails, and I scratch things out, and I use sort of any technique that seems reasonable, that makes sense.
Somebody else has asked, Pat Childs has asked, in all your travels and subsequent paintings, was there one subject or area more difficult to represent than others in your medium?
Well, the easiest tend to be sort of painting landscape in England, Ireland, Scotland, where the humidity in the air really lends itself to watercolor. Watercolor really grew out of England and Ireland, and it just is so easy to paint in those moist climates because the paint stays wet. When you get out into the desert, it dries very, very quickly. So you have to work extremely quickly and oftentimes go over large areas and sort of build them up and make them more and more intense. So climate-wise, British Isles and in Europe as well.
Interesting. Okay, interesting. So let me see. Okay, Alex Corboy wants to know when you're going to do a show of your Irish paintings.
You know, funny you should mention it. Thank you, Alex. I've actually been doing paintings of Ireland, and we've really got a stash of them that we've had that I've saved over the years that I haven't really allowed anybody into, except Alex bought one from my recent trip. But, so we actually have a bunch of them, and we're going to be showing them soon. So stay tuned.
Okay, good. And of course, if you know where the magic closet is with that stash, which exactly. I know now. Okay, so Helen has another question for you, and then I want to dive right into these paintings that we're getting, and I want you to talk about and something that also I think is really important to talk about are the subject. Pardon? The painter, the cowboys that you paint. These are your friends.
I'm sorry. Yes, these are my friends, and everybody in these paintings are actually friends of mine and guys that I know very well. So, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so let me see. What country in your travels influenced you the most? And
well, I spent years in Ireland, so probably Ireland. I lived there for years and had a design studio in Dublin for many years. And so that's the country really that I feel the most at home in other than America. But, you know, I mean, I really am a pretty adaptable traveler and love adapting to kind of wherever I am. I mean, I feel really comfortable in India, feel really comfortable in China. So.
Wow. Yeah. So when you're out there painting, that probably attracts people to, you know, to come ask you questions or?
Endless, yeah.
So it's sort of
whenever I travel, like, I mean, oftentimes, you know, when I've been in India, I'll have a driver, you know, and a translator or, you know, just a driver. But one of the first things that I do when I'm traveling with a driver is when I stop to paint, I sort of teach them to try and help me part the group, you know, groups of people. Any of us who have traveled and paint outdoors know that people congregate all over in front of us. And so one of the things you try to do is you at least try to keep some kind of an avenue in front of you so that you can see what you're supposed to be painting.
Wow. Yeah, right. Wow. Oh, but okay, so the good and the bad of it, but that's really cool. So it's almost like you instantly have a language that you can communicate through.
Well, people are really drawn to, as all painters know, I know Billyo paints on location a lot, and so does Leon, and any of us who paint on location know that it's a magnetic thing to watch somebody else paint and to watch a painting get built up and be created right in front of your eyes. And there have been a couple of times in Elko at the Cowboy Poetry Gathering where they've set up a camera, and I've actually done a painting on stage with a band playing, and over an hour I'll build up a painting and have it finished at the end of the concert. And people always want me to do it again. Do that again.
Wow. Because it is like magic. It's just
like magic.
Yeah.
And it's like magic for us. I mean, you know, it's like magic for us. It doesn't always work, and it doesn't always come out to be something that you want to keep or want or love. But when it does, it's as magical to us as it is to you.
Oh, that's so great. And you know what? I think when it feels like that way for you, it comes through in the painting.
I do too. Yep, yeah, I do too.
Okay, speaking of paintings, can we dive in? Let's get close to some of these.
Okay, so the first painting over here, over my right shoulder, is called Head of the Rubies, and it's a friend of mine, Doug Groves, and this is a painting of a really well-known cowboy out of Nevada, bringing in cattle off the summer range. And I'll stand a little bit here, but I'd rather have you looking at the painting. You know, as the COVID has sort of dominated our lives for the last 6-8 months, it's really, in some ways, been something that we artists are used to, which is isolation. And for me, the greatest metaphor of isolation are the cowboys. And I go out really every year and visit my friends out of the deserts in Nevada and around the Great Basin. And every year I get material. And unfortunately, I can't do it this year. And it's been, you know, a bummer that way. But I've been able to kind of lose myself, you know, with old photographs and just sort of imagination. But this is my friend Doug Groves, who's bringing cattle in the fall down into the valley and into the winter range. So,
hey Becky, could we get even closer to that painting? Just get right into it. Oh, nice. Wow. You know what I love, Willie, is just how you compose these paintings, because, you know, here's this cowboy, you know, and he's riding away, but you just see the backs of these cattle, and the way that painting is composed, and like that mountain range, and it just feels so soothing to me. When I saw that painting, I immediately just gravitated to it. I felt it bring my blood pressure down, and I was like, oh, I can almost smell the air in that painting.
I love that. Well, I wanted it to be warm, so I kept building washes on top of each other, and I ended up making it just golden and more golden, and making it this rich color. I had no idea if it was going to work or not. You know, this is the Ruby Mountains, and they're almost completely unexplored, but there is something really beautiful and soothing about these mountains, and there's nobody living up there, and there's no ski resort, and there's no you know, there's a few hiking trails that people will go up to in the summer, but in general, nobody ever goes there.
Wow.
So,
wow.
The Ruby Mountain.
Hey, let's look at the truck painting. And while we're moving that direction, a couple questions. Let's see. Mary McClurg has a painting called Diablo.
Okay.
Who is that cowboy in that painting? Do you know? Do you remember? Do you remember that painting?
Yes, but I can't remember who the cowboy is.
Okay, I'll tell you what, Mary. If
it may be Manuel Palomino, but I can't remember.
Okay. Okay, and so another question: do you finish your work on site or bring it back to your studio for finishing? You mentioned you initially would carefully plan out your work. Do you continue?
Oh, you know, it's a really fluid process. You know, I do a lot of things and finish a lot of sketches out in the field. I come up with ideas, and oftentimes we'll bring them back and develop them into a larger painting. But like to do this painting, you know, there was so much. It was so the washes were so delicate that, you know, this painting really had to be done in the studio. But they were based on sketches that I had done of this old truck, and Phantom, and I had been painting these old Hopi masks, and you know, and I added colors, and then a good friend of mine was actually playing the Phantom, starring in the Phantom of the Opera in London, and we had just gone over to see him. And the whole thing just kind of came together in, one of those mysterious ways that you really don't predict. But this was a painting that I ended up showing in the one-man show that I had at Denver Art Museum a few years ago. I can't remember how many, 3 or 4 years ago. And anyway, I love this painting. And it's framed in steel. We've been doing all these paintings of steel. So the last show that I just had was called Steel, and it was about steel mills and the steel making process and manufacturing. And almost all the paintings are framed in this angle iron that we put a really beautiful patina on. So there's a steel frame on this painting.
Wow.
So.
Now, I had to kind of arm wrestle you for that painting. You weren't going to give that one up.
That's right.
So it's special to you. Why is it so special? I mean,
well,
I love it.
I mean, I love the design. I love the I love the steel with the, in the snow, it's such a contrast of materials. And for me, it was just really a successful thing. I mean, so many paintings, especially because they're watercolor, fail and just don't come to life. And when they do come to life, there are ones that I really have a hard time letting go of. And this is one of them. So.
In that painting, I mean, I just can't, it's when I saw that in the studio, the thing that just is so that, the snow is not painted on top of the truck. It feels so heavy and wet on that truck, but it's the white paper.
That's right. Yeah. No, there's no white paint. It all reveals itself.
It's just so incredible. And then that phantom like that with that typeface, like that old military.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it is a phantom coming out of this blizzard and this pile. It's incredible.
And oftentimes these old trucks have some kind of designation of, whatever towing garage that they've been working in, or, whatever ranch or some spot. So often there's type on the doors, which I love.
Yeah. Okay, let's scoot on to the next ones. Let's see, Barbara, Willie paints on watercolor paper.
Yes.
And several different kinds, right?
Yeah, I have most of my watercolor paper is made by Twin Rocker in Indiana. And it's all handmade watercolor paper. Some of it is white, some of it is beige. They make a lot of materials. They actually make watercolor paper for me when I tell them that I'd like to have it made in this color with these kinds of qualities. So I've been working with this paper mill for more than 30 years, and I love handmade paper. I love the feeling of handmade paper. As Leon would know well, there's something unpredictable and delicate. So oftentimes I frame paintings with the deckled edge showing, so that you can get a sense that it's actually a product, or not a product isn't the right word, but an event in itself. In a way, you're kind of looking behind the curtain, behind the paper. So this is a painting called Columbia Basin, and this is Louis Hawkins, who's a great friend of mine, and this is in sort of the northwest corner of Nevada. And there's something about that heat and those blue skies. And again, I used some colors in here that I never use, just to kind of overly saturate the sky.
I have to tell you, when I saw that painting, and Becky and I were looking at him, and I just said, I want that painting in the show. It just is happy. I needed that like, you know what? I just wanted that because it's like so much right now, this COVID and how separated and oppressive things feel at times. And that painting, I'm like, Becky, that has to go in the show. It's happy. And then the dog.
There's also something about cowboys, cattlemen, herding cattle and moving them around that is so basic and fundamental in terms of what their job is. And so I've been doing a number of paintings of herding, and again, cowboys on their own, just because it's that isolation that seems so poignant right now.
Wow. Okay. So let's see. I think we have a couple others in the show, and then I need to
move along.
I know. Tell us about
this is a painting from the IL Ranch, and this is called Winter Formation, and it's Nathan Kelly and Frankie Dominguez, who are well-known cattlemen out there, and this is coming around into a corral. And again, these are simple designs, but it's that winter work, that sort of non-glamorous work that people don't think about. They think about the beautiful blue skies and they think about summer pasture, and they don't necessarily think about the really cold, windy, snowy evenings, where the sun goes down at 3:30 in the afternoon. So that's what I was doing with this.
Wow. Yeah, you feel that cold and almost that damp winter. It's gorgeous.
Oh, thanks. And then there's a couple of other little sketches down here. There's a little sketch of a Holstein calf.
Yeah, this is different. This is different for you because it's oil paint, right?
It is, yeah. It's oil on paper, on sort of butcher paper. And I like that because I like the way the oil kind of spreads out around the paint, and it gives it kind of a halo. And so I do that, kind of often, and I really enjoy it. So anyway, this is a little sketch of a Holstein calf.
I love it.
And the next one, the last one, is called Pig Iron Plant, and it's part of my steel series, and it's basically a steel mill in Cleveland, and which is not very Western, but it's sort of an abstract thing, and it's just shows you kind of what I've been doing last fall.
The calf is oil paint.
Yes.
And the calf is spectacular, Willie, is a question or a comment. Let's see, do you include the location on the back of the work?
Sometimes I do, yeah. This is actually California, Northern California.
Okay, and then I know your children paint. That was a question.
Well, my daughter Alistair is actually a successful photographer in Brooklyn, and she's actually doing very well and has a very recognizable style. So Alistair Matthews is her name. And my son Austin is a wonderful painter. Very kind of abstract, but he can draw beautifully and always has been.
And it just kind of, the gene continues on.
Somehow.
Okay, and so the paintings there, somebody's asking how the paintings are mounted. You do Japanese hinges and...
Everything is archival. Yeah, it's just the best of the best. Yeah, okay. In fact, we make the frames. These two are metal, but on the other frames are actually handmade here in our wood shop. We have a wonderful wood shop. As I'll walk around and show you, back here in the window, back behind me where the lights are on, is the wood shop. So,
if you do get a chance to go see Willie's studio and gallery, it is, I mean, you took a really old historic building downtown and converted it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's spectacular. Okay. All right, we're moving on. And there was another question. Somebody wanted to hear more about your album covers and all that. But you know what? That is a whole Zoom talk in and of itself. So you'll have to tune into the next one that we get Willie back on. Okay, Willie, don't go anywhere. Okay, Leon, you're up to bat.
Great.
Hi.
And thank you, Willie. That was really entertaining. I enjoyed that.
Okay, Leon. So I love this combination of artists today because Leon, I've known you. I feel like I've known you forever as well. And you were one of let's see, Joel Osland and you were a couple of the only printmakers we have now.
We were the first two printmakers.
I think so. Now we have several others, but okay, so I always, when I tell people about you and your process, I always tell them that I'm pretty sure you're dyslexic. Okay, kind of kidding, but you, you work backwards.
But it does help to think backwards, yes.
Right. So, okay, so you are doing also woodblock reduction.
Right.
Tell us. Yeah.
So it's, it's like, it's not difficult enough, so you got to make it a little more difficult. So reduction means you're reducing the block, the printing area of the block as you print. So you print a color, and then you take that block, carve away, print another color, carve away, print, carve away, print. And at the end, you don't have a block anymore, but you do have a print. One of the downsides is that when you get to the end and you have a pile of prints that you say, these are done, they really are done. You cannot go back and reprint. So that's why I end up with odd edition numbers. I have 12, which means the print was winning. If I have 20, then I was winning.
How many pieces of paper do you start out with?
Usually if I'm getting 20, I start out with 30 sheets. And some prints will just putter right along and I won't lose that many. And then, like I said, there's some that are just a battle.
Now, the thing about
in the print.
Now, your print work, this is many, many layers, right?
Right. For me, a quick print is 6 to 8 color layers, and that's a quick print. These are all, the one directly behind me of Cucuya Pueblo is probably 20 some color runs using, I think there were 3 blocks. I gave up counting how many color runs I use, mainly because I don't think Willie counts how many brush strokes or Billy counts how many brush strokes he uses. And I used to in the beginning and I kept track of it all. And then it's just like, enough. I'm spending more time tracking this than I am doing what I want to do, which is print and being creative.
Right. So I think the amazing thing, and it's really fun when we get you in front of a crowd and you can show all the tools that you use. So the incredible thing, and if we could even, we'll definitely bring some of your work up closer to the camera because
right.
You get like these skies and these shadows and things that happen that a painter uses a brush and works it in. But you have to create this with multiple blocks and you're thinking from the lightest color to the darkest?
Usually I work light to dark, but then, it's always good to kind of kick your feet out from under you and start something new and just get yourself off balance. And that's where you get creative, is when you have to solve problems and put yourself on edge.
So speaking of kicking the legs out from underneath you, you recently got rid of your press.
I started out printing in oil-based inks. I developed an allergy to oil products, to chemicals, and it was either give up printing or figure something else out. And then I stumbled into some Japanese prints and I haven't looked back. I mean, it is so exciting and so flexible and so creative what you can do with this process. And so I've sold all my presses and now this is my press.
Wow. Wow.
So I can print anywhere.
Wow. So, you and I were talking a while back about the Japanese process, and we don't want to get like too far down the road with that, but you stumbled upon a cache of Japanese, really old Japanese woodblock prints.
Right. And there was an antique dealer on Antique Row on Broadway, and that's where we had our studio, our gilding studio, for quite a long time. And they called up and said, we have a few prints for you if you'd like to look. And so I went down, and it was just like, oh my goodness, they have no idea what they have. And so I went in the next day with a big check and say, I want all the paper.
Wow.
And we got it out of there so fast. And then it was just, the challenge was there were 300 some prints sitting on the table, and I had jobs to get done, but these prints were calling me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But that was how, like, you just studied these for years, really, before you tried it, didn't you?
I did. And you know, in the first attempts were a little cumbersome, and then you get better and better at it. The one, Kikuye Pueblo, or Kikuye Morning, is something I'm really proud of, because that's a 16 by 20 woodblock. And to get the sky even, printed evenly with a solid color is a real challenge.
Wow.
And so I was really excited about that. And it's just a matter of looking at these old prints and how they solved problems, and how they explained something, how they said something. And these prints were just so dynamic and so creative and so inspiring. So
Yeah. Can you bring that one closer to, so we can see all that?
yeah. So
Aha. Oh, yeah.
so you can see that the yellow is pretty much under everything, because that's the first layer. And then, so I really started with the sky. I built the sky. And then everything in the foreground is much darker, so it can overlay the sky. But to be able to print those solid, even colors in the sky was really a challenge and really exciting to do.
That's incredible. Cindy put a comment up. Wow, mad respect for the talented mind and patience Leon must have, especially knowing he can't uncarve a block. So impressive.
Oh yeah, you can't.
You have super glue in there, and you put.
You have super glue, you have wood putty, or you get a little jigsaw and cut out a circle. Out of desperation, I've done this a number of times. As you're listening to the Gypsy Kings, and you're carving away madly, and you just carved away the area you wanted to keep.
Oh no!
So you cut out around it. You cut a hole, put in a new piece of wood, and back it, and then you're ready to go again. Just don't put on the Gypsy Kings again.
Yeah, right. I was at an Andrew Wyeth show years ago, and there was a huge watercolor painting of a boy in a cave stepping into a pool of water, this black water. And apparently, Andrew Wyeth had meant to keep a white highlight on the water, but didn't do it. When you got up close to that painting, he actually tore the paper out to make the white.
He's such an amazing artist. I mean, there was no bounds.
Right? But it's exactly like what you're saying. You know what? You just do what you like, you figure it out, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And there's where a lot of the creativity comes in, because you get thrown into a pit and you got to figure it out, but you end up pushing yourself beyond your normal comfort range.
Yeah.
And something comes out of that. In this Kikuya Morning, we spent a lot of times as kids running around on these Pueblo sites when we were running around. So the Kikuya Morning is reimagined what the Pecos Pueblo would have looked like in 1700. So obviously it wasn't there when we were kids. But there was mounds and walls, and we would run around on them as kids, something that you would never be allowed to. And we would always visualize what it was like. And so these old memories always kind of percolate back into whatever I'm doing and come out in the painting.
So your family is from this area. They have a cabin in the, you're like from here. And so.
Right. My great grandfather built a cabin up above Evergreen. So we're right below Mount Evans. But then we grew up on a ranch in northern New Mexico, back in the mountains. And that's where my brother and I just would kind of run loose as kids.
Because I feel like that's something you really get in your work, is this sense of the atmosphere, the light. It's almost like your images are kind of daydreams of these just really wonderful, it's a sense of the West that you get in your work.
I mean, daydreams at this one of the Broadmoor Hotel. So my wife and I went down there in February 2019. No, it was February this year. Oh my goodness. It was this year we went down there and stayed, and it was just, and the snow flurries were coming in, and it was just really magical, and you wanted to capture that. And so I tried to get that, and I used an old piece of wood that was from a sawmill that's up by our cabin. And there's this old wood, big planks, big wide. Willie would go wild over these. Some of them are 12 inches wide.
Wow.
And then I brought out the grain. And then, so here's the print. And I don't know if you can see the grain that's printed in there. But just get the feel of the flurries, the snow coming down, just blowing across the lake.
Beautiful. Oh.
So it is memories. It is daydreams, as you say.
Yeah. Do you you do sketching, you watercolor out on location and oil paint too on location, right?
No more oil painting, but I do watercolors. So come out with a lot of these watercolor sketches. So we were up at our cabin cutting trees, and so this is a quick little sketch during lunch that I did. And it's just kind of a habit, and I'm sure everybody, all the other artists are the same way. Do you ever stop? No, this is what I love to do.
There's no retirement from this job.
Oh no, thank goodness.
Right?
Right.
Show us your other work for the show.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to show, and I don't know if it shows up on this one, but I don't know if you can see the specks of snow that I spattered on.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of inspired by one of these prints, and it was a war print, a Japanese Korean war print that was, and the artist, it was a battle scene at sea, and this artist had speckled the white snow with a brush onto the print. And I thought, I can do that. And so it was really fun, and it worked out so well. The other print is along the Roaring Fork River, and just a morning float. And so trying to get that kind of morning glow. There's a bit of mist in the air, and then Sopris behind. And again, just talking, your comment about these are memories, daydreams. I mean, my father and I spent who knows how many hours on the river, on the Roaring Fork, up and down the river fishing. And so as you're building this, all those memories percolate into your mind, and then they make their way into the pieces. And so this is quite a few layers building. So the very first layer was this yellow up in the sky, and it's down here in the water. And when you first print the yellow, you think, oh my goodness, that's really bright. But there's nothing relative around it, any of the darks. So once you put the darks in, then it's not quite so bright. So just building that, building layers. And
you really have to trust in the, I mean, obviously you know what you're doing at this point, but you kind of have to trust and not judge, or you wouldn't get off the first or second block, really.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few times I've gone back in and realized, okay, that just was kind of wimpy in the beginning. And so I'll go back in and cut a new block and just put in a new color. You know, there's no reason why you can't cut a new block. I mean, it's the way I print now. This is one I'm working on. So you can see the chapel. It's already printed like 5 colors. And then there's this side, the warm side. You know, but then I've already decided, oh, I missed something. So on the steeple here, I didn't get it as dark as I wanted it in the beginning. So I've got this side. I'll do a block on that side. You know, so there's no reason why you can't just keep going and keep printing.
Wow. Hey, so Cindy's asking, what is one of the biggest challenges or problems to solve in printmaking? You talked about it is all problem solving, and I think all art is problem solving.
That's a lot of it is putting the pieces together. It's in the beginning, it's having a good roadmap to work from. So that means a sketch. But then, like any good roadmap, there's lots of detours that happen. And that's where it gets exciting. And it's a lot of it is keeping the structure there, but then putting something other than structure in it. That becomes the challenge. And that's when I realize, okay, this is a really nice technical piece, and that's all it is. So it's either mess it up and really go for it or throw it away. You know, so you do have to push it. You have to be willing to take a chance and to have it be creative, have something exciting in there, is to push the limits of it. You're out of your comfort zone a lot of times, and that's when something good happens usually.
Wow. I think it would be like, I just keep thinking of all the work that goes into that, and that, I don't know. I mean, I think I might be hesitant to push it. So
well, yeah, I don't know. My father always joked at me. He says, "Oh, you better figure out what you're going to do, or you're going to dig ditches all your life." Well, I don't know. Digging ditches might be easier. I mean, this is a lot of carving, but I love it. You know, I love the process of seeing an image evolve from this light color, and then you really don't know what you have in the beginning, but you do, as you said, you do have to have faith, and then suddenly it starts coming together, and that's when it gets exciting.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay, Leon, I am going to move to Billyo, but don't.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, don't go anywhere. Stay put.
No.
Billyo. So you're in your studio in Missouri.
Yes, this is where my grandmother used to milk cows.
Oh, seriously? No, he's really telling the truth, people. That is where his grandmother.
I got the old family homestead, so it just means a lot to me, being one of 9 children. So
wow.
It's a special place for me.
Wow. One of these days, I'm going to fly in and just come see you. And
well, I'll treat you royally.
Oh, I know you will. I know you will. So a few years ago, I was able to talk Billyo into coming out to Colorado. And you kind of fell in love with it. You and Terry Gardner are good friends.
Yes, we actually worked together back here in St. Louis, Missouri, as I was an illustrator and he was a designer. And we worked together. We both had the same passion and the same interest. And we would go on these painting trips together. And then Terry actually wound up moving out west. And would go and meet him, and we would travel all around we've been all over the West. And Terry's just, he's got I've known him for a long time, and I know what he puts into his work, and he's passionate about it, and him and I just relate so well.
He is such a wonderful, committed artist. And so I can't remember how I saw your work years ago, and I watched you paint. Okay. So you were in a pumpkin patch, and I was sitting there watching you paint. And okay, I'm going to tell you this now. I remember looking at that, and you put so much paint on and you're just so natural at it. You're just dipping into colors and putting a stroke on and dipping more color stroke and thick paint. And we have to get in and look at that paint. And I tell you what, I was sitting there thinking, oh boy, that's not going to work. Oh, that's crazy. Why? Oh no, he's going to ruin it. Oh, no, he didn't ruin it. Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, this one, no. It was so funny. And I didn't say a word, of course, but then at the end of it, this painting was phenomenal. And I just remember thinking, how did he put all that together in his mind, the colors? And you just would so patiently put a color in, mix some more, put another one in. You got to talk about your process.
Well, I actually got my degree in sculpture. One of the reasons why is because I was disappointed with the painting instructors. And then when I got out of college, I got a job as an illustrator. But I've always loved that tactile quality. And when I was a kid, I would make these sculptures out of pond mud. And my brothers, I've got 4 brothers, and they just loved destroying them. And it was a lot of entertainment for us as kids. And years ago, I was out in California, and I create these problems, these creative problems for me to solve. And the problem was that when I get all my stuff packed away from painting in California, and by the time I get back to St. Louis, the paint is dried. So my goal, the creative problem was to do a painting with all the paint on my palette, use it all up and create a painting. And I loved the painting. The painting was just a huge success for me. I was just thrilled about it. And so and this is going back probably about 15, a little bit longer than that ago, but it's been a process for me to develop the surface. And I've spent a lot of time looking at artists in the past and how they look at artists that do thick paint. And a lot of artists get lost in it. They really struggle with it. And there aren't that many people I feel that have been successful with it. Some people just get thick to be getting thick. And there's a real gift and ability and a technique to be able to work that thick paint and get those colors exact and the values exact, because there's no transparency to the paint. You got to apply it and make it work. There's no excuse.
So would you grab some of those paintings or come close to them so I want you to talk about this work, and I really want people to be able to kind of see it closer. And for sure, you can see all of this work on the Coors Show website. It's CoorsWesternArt.com. But I really, like with Billyo's, I definitely want you can see how the light is catching the surface on that painting. It's because that paint is so thick.
That's one of the things I liked about painting thick, is that the painting comes alive. When you walk across the room, there's little reflections that happen on the paint, and it makes it come absolutely alive. I mean, this one's still pretty shiny from being new, but as it mats out a little bit, you'll see these different things that happen with the paint that are just really exceptional. Something I get very excited about doing that.
And where is that painting? That looks like it's from out in Colorado.
Yeah, that's Stray Horse Gulch, from Stray Horse Gulch, looking over Leadville,
Nice.
Colorado.
Wow.
So, and then sometimes on the painting, like this one right here, a lot of times I'll get on location and I won't have, and I'll work out the composition on the back. So a lot of these will have the actual composition kind of worked out on the back of the painting.
Oh my gosh. Wait, can we see that one up close, Billyo?
Oh, sure. Let me bring
Yeah, no, you just bring the painting to the camera.
bring this over again. Here we go. I've got to kind of look at the computer to see what you guys are looking at. But
Yeah, there you go.
I camped in this area for 3 days and I just absolutely loved it. It's north of Tucson, Catalina State Park. And I love just the openness of everything. Back here in Missouri, things get really green for a certain period of time. And so I really enjoy going out west and painting out west. I don't know if you can see much of, does that help or not?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
great.
And then here's one of Morning Light, Leadville.
Mm.
One of the things I really liked about Leadville and some of these other small towns is that feeling of coming into that little Western town, this historic town, and they look like little gems, from the distance. And I love that little gem-like quality that happens to them off in the distance.
Oh, yeah.
And then this is a little pool up in the area there, and it's got, like I said, I'll work out my composition on the back here. I don't know if you can see that or not.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So what are you working out in the composition?
I'm sorry?
What are you working out in the composition?
It's just how I want to capture it. I usually draw the scene and then I'll put a box on it. You can see where I've gone beyond it over here. I've gone beyond it. I've gone up here, and then I will center it, and it'll give me my center point, and then I can build the painting from that center point out to these areas. So I'll actually put a line on this and build the painting out.
Oh, nice. Hey, so when we were talking the other day, Billyo,
Yeah.
you were talking to me about the Francois Malay exhibit that you saw
Yes.
there in Missouri, and how his work has really been influential to you. And the work is very different, but I'm wondering if you would talk about that a little bit.
I'd be glad to. One of the things, out where I was raised, the people across the road from us, I was raised a little bit north of the Missouri River. The people across the road had 4,300 acres. People behind us had 10,000 acres. And I worked for all these small farms out in that area. And I really understood discipline and hard work. And when I see Malay's work, there was just an exhibit in the St. Louis here not long ago. And when I walked through there, I could actually see myself in these paintings. And it really connected with me. And it was fascinating how Malay influenced Van Gogh and how he influenced all these other artists back in that time. And so it's like he's almost like been this missing thing that I've found that he's helping me connect with my past and see it in a different way. And that's sometimes that happens to me with a lot of artists.
How do you mean connect with your past?
that whole physical act, that whole physical thing of putting fences up, of splitting firewood, of moving bales of hay and things like that. There's a labor thing that happens that I think there's less and less of it now. It's all getting mechanized, and so there's just something that's real special about putting your time and your effort and your hard work into things that, I mean, much like I do with my painting or Leon and Willie, we can relate with that, but I could also relate with that physical labor. And Leon talked about it too, of going out and cutting trees and doing that labor. And it just Malay has just really inspired me of late.
Yeah. And you were talking about really taking that idea and painting that for Missouri. And so I kind of want to say, we are the Coors Western Art Exhibit, and you are definitely on the other side of the Mississippi. Yeah. But I think, like, to me, the West is broadly defined, and it's a sensibility. And I think exactly what you're saying is a big part of that sensibility and tradition of being a Westerner is, really doing the work, putting in the time. Yes. And I get that sense with you.
Yeah, and it's like it's like the surfaces that I paint. It would be real easy just to paint like I've always done, but it's a real challenge for me. And one thing I've never walked away from is that challenge and that effort to try and pursue something and have that discovery, that rebirth. And that's one of the things I really like about what I'm doing now with that thickness of paint is that whole surface, that whole language. And what I'm finding out is I've got to create my own language with things that I do. I've judged a lot of art shows. And one of the things I always talk about is when I get up close to a painting, I can tell what an artist knows when I get up close and look at the structure of the strokes. And that's one thing I hope that carries over in my paintings that are done in the way that is the application of paint and the confidence and the structure that's put in those.
Well, okay. So, give us some insight about what that is. What do you see that you know about the artist?
Well, what I see when I look into their work, what I see is I can tell the difference between a brushstroke that is meant to say nothing and a brushstroke that's meant to suggest structure or a highlight, different planes, reflected light, things like that. I hope that makes sense.
So like every stroke really needs to count, and every snip of color needs to complement the ones next to it in that kind of sense, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So in a way, you can see the confidence in the artist by the way those brushstrokes are laid down. Is that what you're saying?
You're exactly right. So it's like looking at an abstract painting. When you look at an abstract painting, you can see that freedom and that energy in the strokes. And that's not to say you can't, someone that paints representational can't bring those things into their work. And that's where the skill and the ability comes in, is that application of paint and getting that surface to work and getting the object to read.
Yeah. So, so we've gone over, but, I warned you we were going over. So that's all I'm going to say here. I do have a final question, and then I'd love to know if you have questions for each other. But let me see. My final question is for each of you. Would you just talk about the schooling, what got you like from there to here? Billyo, you were talking about going to school for sculpture, and then you were an illustrator, and now you're here. Like, can you just briefly sort of give us how you got to this work?
You know, that I think a lot of it is just following my passion and going where the paint takes me. The paint has always taken me places that has always surprised me. And, you know, doing sculpture, you know, when I was going to college, I paid for my college by going to street shows every summer. And so the sculpture was a great thing. But when I got out of college, I realized that, you know, it didn't really quite fit in with where I was going, because I actually still wanted to be a painter, and the illustration, I just slipped right into that. I went to work for a major corporation. It was the third largest art department in America. And I started doing landscapes, and then they started saying, well, you can do these landscapes. So they started flying me to these really high-end resorts like Mauna Lani in Hawaii, and I do a painting to commemorate a business event, or the Arizona Biltmore, or the Laguna Niguel, Ritz-Carlton, the Four Seasons on Lanai. So my landscapes were coming in, and then just my whole world changed, and I really just started getting more. I thought becoming a painter would be almost impossible here in Missouri, but I connected with an artist in Colorado, and we were there at the first Richard Schmid workshop, and it just changed my whole life. And I wound up getting into a gallery in California, and the rest of it was just history. So it's been a long journey.
Yeah, well, with anything good, anything worthwhile, right? Leon, tell us how you got from here to there to here.
I mean, it's like Willie, my mother was really involved in the arts, and as well as my grandmother. So there was always art around me growing up. And then there was a pack of us kids, and our grandmother decided to keep them entertained. She had art classes for us. And pretty much coming out of high school, I knew what I wanted to do. And it's been, you know, there was an interruption with the Army for a number of years. And then the minute kids come along, reality strikes. But you know, the dream never left, and I was always working toward it. And art has always been there. It's always paid the bill when there wasn't money for anything else. And it's always kept me spiritually going. It's been my resource forever. So it's, I mean, just kind of, I started walking and doing art, and that's that.
It is that, isn't it? It is that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, tapping into that.
So, you know, and it'll be, as you said, there is no retirement, which is thank goodness. Okay. So I'll just keep doing art, and then one day I won't.
And then all your paintings will be done.
Yes, they will.
Willie Matthews, tell us how you got here.
You know, I started painting really early on. I mean, I have early memories of disappearing from family gatherings when I was 7, 8 years old, and sitting with a block of Arches paper and pretty primitive watercolors and painting on my lap early on. And I just always did that. And it was my escape, just like Leon and Billyo. And I think with a lot of us who made this commitment to be artists, it wasn't sort of a career decision. It was really our escape, and it was what we love to do and what took us into a magical world. And I always had to make a living, and always decided that I was going to do it with art. And I had a graphic design studio for a long time. And at one point I had 12 people, and we had a lot of good accounts, and I realized that I was just bored with it, and decided that I was going to become a painter. And it took me several years to shut down the studio and to let the clients know that we were no longer going to be in business doing that. And but that was 35 years ago, and I haven't looked back, and I've enjoyed it every day and continue to. And like Leon, I have no interest in retiring.
This is so perfect. Thank you all so much. And I'm wondering if you have any last questions for each other or comments for each other. And yeah, and go ahead.
Well, I would say thank you, Rose, for putting this all together. I know it's a lot of work, and especially this year. So I really appreciate it. And you always manage to somehow create something magical for the show each year. And this is no exception. This is great.
This is our lemonade out of lemons year.
Yes.
This is very magical. To hear Leon and Willie talk about their work has just created so much interest in me in looking at their work more, and some of these other videos too. And thank you, Rose, for giving me the opportunity to talk about my work, because I feel like it's something I don't do enough of.
Yeah, I love hearing Billyo talk about his paintings and his process, and his palette is so unique and so identifiable. Anybody who knows his work would recognize it now anytime they see one. And Leon and I have been friends for many, many years in the same galleries. And I've certainly admired him and admired the process. I love the printmaking process, Japanese prints. And it's just amazing to hear both of you talk about it, because that's something that none of us really ever get. So again, thank you, Rose. Really an amazing thing this year. Thank you.
I mean, really, from my heart, thank you, all of you artists, and wonderful comments coming in. Fantastic experience. Thank you so much. Love these amazing stories. Thank you for sharing.
Sherry Knoll is my sister, by the way. Sherry Knoll and Kim Wheaton.
I don't know. These are unsolicited. You didn't pay for these.
Well, I paid a little, but not much.
Oh, okay, here we go. Tell Willie he's done an amazing job from his little sister.
Exactly.
Thank you. This has been great. You know what? Thank you all so very much. I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. You've definitely earned a glass of wine, so please uncork one on the way back out of your studio. And for everybody, these videos have been recorded, so you can go back and listen to the recording or tell the people if you've missed it. Also, the artwork is all online. This year, everything is going to be for sale on Handbid. So that will be live December 17th. So you can go in and start bidding. The bidding culminates on January 5th, which would have been our red carpet reception, where you would have been able to see all of these artists in person and talk to them. Unfortunately not, so this is our closest we can come. But on January 5th, the bidding closes at 8 p.m. We're going to have a program. We're going to announce awards. By the way, Best of Show is being selected this year by Louis Sharp, the former director of the Denver Art Museum. So we've got some heavy hitters this year picking our awards. So pretty exciting. So tune in January 5th, and do check out the website, CoorsWesternArt.com. And certainly if you have any questions or comments, please go ahead and send them to us. There's contact on that page, and somebody sent a question early for Willie. That was really great. So anything like that, if you have other questions, I can reach out to the artists and get back to you. And but thank you all for staying over longer. I knew this was going to happen. Happy Thanksgiving. And we will see you next week for our next Zoom talks. Willie, Leon, Billyo, mwah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rose. See you guys.
Everybody.
See you soon. Happy
See you later,
Thanksgiving.
Willie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.